The fluorescent lights on the ceiling of the courtroom cast a cold, harsh glow, reflecting off the stiff face of Harper Calloway as she sat in the defendant's chair. The evidence against Harper was flawless. Security cameras had caught her at the scene of the crime at exactly the right moment. The murder weapon bore her fingerprints, and a witness swore to seeing her near Brandon Miller's apartment the night he was killed. Layer upon layer of evidence built up, creating an airtight case with no cracks. Harper knew she had never stepped into that apartment on that terrible night, but the trial didn't care about her defense. Inspector Michael Harrington stood grimly on the prosecution's side, his face cold and unyielding. He was in charge of the case, repeatedly telling the media that the evidence against Harper was undeniable. Everything moved too fast, too smoothly, as if it had all been carefully planned. In the spectator section, Grayson Hayes, Harper's former colleague, sat motionless. His eyes were sharp, his face blank, but beneath that, a storm was quietly brewing. He couldn't believe Harper was a killer. She was one of the best officers he'd ever worked with, a woman who chased justice with both her mind and her heart. Suddenly, a loud bark echoed through the room. All eyes turned to Rex, Harper's dog, being led out of the courtroom by an officer. But Rex refused to leave. He planted himself, his body tense, growling fiercely. His front paws scraped against the floor tiles as his eyes locked onto Harper, resisting with all his strength. Other officers had to help drag Rex out, but he kept struggling, whining sharply, his gaze never leaving Harper, as if trying to hold on. Harper glanced at Rex one last time before being escorted out, a dull pain flaring in her chest. She wasn't afraid of death. She was afraid the truth would be buried forever. After the trial, Rex was transferred to another unit once Harper was locked up. The officers there quickly noticed his odd behavior. The dog, once disciplined and focused, was now completely distracted. He ignored every command, no longer responding as quickly as before. He refused to eat, lying in a corner of the kennel, his eyes fixed on the door, waiting for someone. Even during training, he showed no interest in the drills he'd once mastered. Soon, reports came in. Rex was no longer fit for duty. Some officers suggested sending him to a training center for rehab or even retiring him. But when Grayson Hayes heard this, he immediately offered to adopt Rex. Grayson visited the facility one late afternoon. When he entered, Rex lay still, unmoving. Grayson crouched down, gently placing his hand on the dog's head. "You remember Harper, don't you?" he said softly. His words seemed to reach Rex. The dog suddenly whimpered, then bolted toward the door, scratching at it like he was desperate to run out and search for something. A trainer nearby shook his head. "He's been like this ever since. Every time he hears the name Calloway, he reacts this way." Grayson had seen many dogs loyal to their handlers, but his gut told him Rex's behavior was more than just longing. The way Rex acted, it wasn't just missing Harper. It was something deeper, more intense. Rex wasn't just grieving. He was waiting for her, as if she might somehow return. Grayson had never seen a dog act as strangely as Rex. In the few days since adopting him, he'd hoped to help him recover from the shock of losing Harper. But it seemed impossible. Rex refused to adjust to his new life, ignoring even basic commands he once obeyed perfectly. Worse, he'd stopped eating. At first, Grayson thought he just needed time. But when Rex's food sat untouched for 2 days straight, the dog just sitting in a corner, staring blankly at the door, Grayson knew something was really wrong. Every time Grayson approached, Rex would let out a soft whine, then lower his head to the floor, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Grayson tried everything. Rex's favorite beef, long walks, even playtime. Nothing worked. Then, one night, things got worse. Grayson jolted awake at midnight to the sound of deep, rumbling growls from the living room. He grabbed his gun and crept out. The faint glow of streetlights outlined Rex's sleek black fur. The dog stood rigid, eyes locked on the front door, ears pricked, body tense. Grayson held his breath, finger tight on the trigger, and peeked outside. Nothing. The street was silent. No shadows, no movement. But Rex stayed frozen, one paw slightly raised, muscles coiled. Grayson could feel the tension. Rex sensed something, something humans couldn't see or hear. "All right, buddy," Grayson muttered, lowering the gun. "Let's go for a walk. Looks like you've got something to tell me." He grabbed the leash and clipped it onto Rex's collar. Rex's collar clicked shut, and instantly, the dog sprang to life, no longer sluggish. He yanked the leash toward the door, whining urgently, as if he'd been waiting for this chance forever. Night had swallowed the city in thick blackness, broken only by dim streetlights reflecting off the wet pavement. Grayson followed Rex, but soon realized he wasn't the one in control. Rex was leading him. The moment they left the neighborhood, the dog surged forward, pulling hard, his powerful legs driving him like he knew exactly where to go. Grayson tightened his grip, but Rex was stronger than he'd thought. The dog kept charging ahead, nose twitching, sniffing the air, not lost, but tracking something. "Rex, slow down," Grayson muttered, tugging the leash. But Rex ignored him. His body was tense, tail stiff, ears sharp, locked onto whatever lay ahead. Then Grayson understood. They were heading toward a narrow alley near Brandon Miller's crime scene, the very place Harper was accused of murder. Grayson froze, heart hammering. This wasn't random. After days of strange behavior, Rex had brought him here. Cautiously, Grayson stepped into the shadowy alley, flashlight sweeping the ground. Trash, old crates, broken glass, nothing unusual. But then Rex started pawing frantically at the cement near the far wall. Grayson bent down and froze. Under the beam of his light, something caught his eye. A small, ragged scrap of skin? A chill ran down his spine. The material was disturbingly soft and smooth, yet slightly stretchy. It felt like human skin. Grayson inhaled sharply, unease tightening his chest. This couldn't be real skin, yet it was too lifelike. The texture was smooth but flexible, with just enough give, like some kind of advanced biopolymer. He pocketed it for analysis, but worse than his curiosity was the growing dread worming through his mind. If he was right about this, Harper was being framed. Rex still refused to leave, his intense stare locked on the spot he'd uncovered, as if more secrets lay buried there. Grayson dug around with his bare hands but found nothing. With a frustrated sigh, he stood, clutching the strange synthetic fragment, and led Rex from the alley. While waiting for the lab results, more bad news arrived. Another murder. The victim this time was Harvey Donovan, a prominent businessman. Grayson sat at his desk, the dim lamp casting long shadows across case files. A photo of Donovan's crime scene lay beside the Miller file. His eyes narrowed as he studied every detail. The similarities were chilling. From the bullet trajectory to the body's position, even the crime scene's layout. This wasn't random violence. It was a signature, a killer's calling card. But was it coincidence or deliberate pattern? Grayson rubbed his temples, pressure building behind his eyes. The police had rushed Harper's conviction for Miller's murder. Now, as he fought to prove her innocence, another identical killing occurred. No way this was chance. Someone was meticulously recreating the crime. Or worse, the killer was still out there, free to strike again. Rex lay near the desk, but not relaxed. His ears stood alert, eyes tracking Grayson's every move. Suddenly, The dog padded to the desk and began sniffing the crime scene photos intently. A low growl rumbled in his throat as he nudged one picture, the close-up of Harvey Donovan's murder scene. Grayson frowned and leaned in, tracing his fingers across the photo. At first glance, it showed a spotless upscale apartment, Donovan's body perfectly centered in the living room. But then Grayson spotted it, a faint, nearly erased symbol on the wall behind the victim, a triangle with a slash through it, barely visible unless you knew where to look. His hand shook as he grabbed Brandon Miller's crime scene photo. There it was again, the exact same mark. This wasn't coincidence. This was a message. Rex gave a soft woof, pawing at the desk as if saying, "I told you so." The dog had noticed first. Now, Grayson couldn't unsee the truth. Donovan wasn't just some businessman. He had money, political ties, and past dealings with Miller. But the real question was, who gained from both their deaths? Grayson spent hours searching police databases but found no record of the symbol. That only proved it wasn't ordinary. Maybe a gang sign? A killer's signature? The system showed zero matches when he ran the image. Frustrated, Grayson rubbed his temples. Rex still hadn't looked away from the photos. "What do you see that I'm missing, boy?" Grayson murmured, scratching behind the dog's ears. Then it hit him. If the police had no record, maybe this wasn't regular crime. Maybe they'd stumbled onto something bigger, something organized, something dangerous. Grayson shot up, gathering files. Rex's tense posture confirmed it. That dog's instincts were sharper than any detective's. He scrolled through his contacts, finger pausing on one name: Ethan. Ethan Carter wasn't just some journalist. He was the kind of investigator who specialized in the stories police couldn't, or wouldn't, touch. If anyone knew about those strange symbols, it would be him. Grayson grabbed his coat and left the office, a lead weight settling in his chest. If the killer was still out there, then Harper was nothing more than a pawn in a much deadlier game. The cafe in the old district smelled of bitter coffee and older secrets. Rain from earlier still glistened on the pavement outside, streetlights casting long, watery shadows that mirrored the heaviness in Grayson's gut. In the farthest corner, Ethan Carter was already waiting, his sharp eyes scanning something on his laptop. The former top reporter had fallen off the public radar after nearly dying during an exposé on police corruption, but his work hadn't stopped. It had just gone deeper underground. "We were right," Ethan said without preamble as Grayson sat. He turned the laptop screen. Brandon Miller wasn't just some businessman. He had direct ties to Black Widow. His finger tapped the screen showing complex financial webs. These transactions connect Miller to Harvey Donovan, and both connect to that assassin group operating in the shadows. Grayson's jaw tightened as he scanned the documents. The numbers didn't lie. Both victims had been moving dirty money through the same channels. "So these weren't random murders," he muttered. "We're looking at professional hits." Ethan pulled the laptop back, his fingers flying across the keyboard. When he spoke again, his voice dropped to a whisper that barely carried over the cafe's jazz music. "That symbol you found? It's not some gang tag or killer's signature." He turned the screen again, revealing crime scene photos from 3 different countries. "It's Black Widow's encryption mark. They use it to flag high-profile hits, the kind meant to send messages." Grayson's coffee went cold in his hands as he studied the images. There it was, that same faint triangle with a slash through it, hidden in different ways at each scene but always present. On a Parisian balcony railing, scratched into a Moscow hotel room's floorboards. And now, twice in his city. "Damn it," Grayson breathed, his mind racing. The pieces were coming together to form a picture far more dangerous than he'd imagined. Harper hadn't just been framed. She'd been carefully positioned to take the fall for professional killers. And if Black Widow was involved, The real murderer wasn't just still out there, they were probably already selecting their next target. Rex, who'd been lying quietly under the table, suddenly lifted his head with a soft whine. The dog's ears pricked forward, his body tense like he sensed the gravity of their discovery. Grayson reached down to stroke his head absently, his other hand already pulling out his phone. They'd need backup for this, the kind that didn't officially exist. Grayson's knuckles whitened as he gripped the table. So, these aren't random killings. They're a message, part of some calculated assassination chain. Exactly, Ethan confirmed, lowering his voice. But here's what doesn't fit. Black Widow are ghosts, professionals who vanish without trace. These symbols? They're practically neon signs pointing to their work. Why would the world's most secretive killers suddenly want attention? The silence between them grew heavy. Grayson studied the crime scene photos, his mind racing. If Black Widow truly wanted secrecy, they'd never leave these calling cards. Yet the symbols were there, obvious to anyone looking. More disturbingly, the police reports never mentioned these marks, Grayson realized coldly. Not Miller's case, not Donovan's. Either nobody spotted them, his voice dropped to a whisper, or someone made sure they disappeared from the record. Ethan's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. You're saying there's a cop helping cover this up? Maybe even working for them? The implication hung between them like a knife. They weren't just hunting killers. They were up against traitors within their own ranks. Grayson tapped the strange skin-like material on the table. And this? Rex led me straight to it near Miller's crime scene. Ethan examined the sample again, marveling at its uncanny properties. The forensic report confirmed their fears. An advanced biopolymer mimicking human tissue perfectly. Not just appearance, but temperature and texture. Programmable. Undetectable. A mask, Grayson breathed. Someone wore Harper's face to frame her. That's how they fooled the cameras. His stomach turned. But the fingerprints on the weapon. To get those they'd need direct access to Harper, Ethan finished, paling. Someone close enough to steal her prints. The revelation chilled them both. This wasn't just a frame job. It was an inside operation with terrifying technology and reach. Later, at his apartment door, Grayson's blood turned to ice. The unmarked envelope contained a single typed warning. Stop now while you still can. If not, your dog dies first. Rex nuzzled his leg, warm and alive. For now. The message was clear. They were watching. They knew every move he'd made. And Harper. The prison call came through at dawn. Harper Calloway. The woman sentenced to death had her execution date abruptly moved up. Normally, she'd have months for appeals, but a shadowy high-level order had cut through all legal processes like a knife. No explanation given, just a cold announcement that Harper Calloway would die in 10 days. Grayson slammed the letter onto the table, his eyes burning with fury. This wasn't just a cover-up anymore. Someone with serious power was pulling strings to bury Harper and the truth forever. Rex pressed against his leg, the dog's muscular body tense as a coiled spring. Those alert ears twitched at every sound, sensing his master's rage. Time was slipping through their fingers like sand. Outside, a misty darkness swallowed the streets, the occasional streetlight casting long, ghostly fingers across wet pavement. Since receiving the threat, Grayson had chased every possible lead, only to hit wall after wall. The feeling of invisible eyes watching his every move grew stronger, yet the puppeteers remained faceless. What started as a simple walk to clear his head quickly turned into something else. Rex suddenly yanked the leash, dragging Grayson toward that same alley where they'd found the synthetic skin. This time, the dog went straight to work, paws flying through debris until something glinted in the flashlight's beam. A black leather glove, dusty, stained with old blood that flaked under Grayson's trembling fingers. His pulse roared in his ears. This wasn't in any evidence log. Someone had planted it here, or, more likely, tried to hide it. The lab results hit like a sledgehammer. 1. Blood wasn't Harper's. 2. DNA matched Jonas Quaid, a known Black Widow assassin. 3. Quaid's file contained classified references to the very organization leaving those triangle symbols. Grayson nearly dropped the papers. This changed everything. If Quaid's blood was at Miller's crime scene, then Harper was innocent. More than that, her framing was clearly orchestrated by professionals. Without hesitation, Grayson gathered the damning evidence. There was only one person who could halt Harper's execution now: Detective Michael Harrington, the lead investigator on her case. The same detective who'd called the evidence against her irrefutable. As Grayson sprinted to his car, Rex let out an uncharacteristic growl at the shadows behind them. The dog knew what his master was only beginning to understand. They weren't just fighting to save Harper anymore. They were walking straight into the killer's crosshairs. If this was truly a conspiracy to frame Harper, police intervention was needed immediately. Detective Michael Harrington accepted the file with an inscrutable expression. His office glowed under soft yellow lighting, the perfectly arranged paperwork on his desk almost unnaturally orderly. He flipped through the documents with methodical precision. "Are you certain about these results?" His deep voice gave nothing away, no surprise, no concern. "I don't deal in speculation," Grayson countered. "If Quaid's blood was at the scene, Harper's innocent. Someone framed her." Harrington leaned back in his leather chair, fingers drumming the mahogany desk. "Do you have any idea what you're stirring up, Hayes?" Grayson held his gaze. "I know exactly what's at stake, and I know there's a traitor in this department helping cover it up." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on, broken only by the clock's relentless ticking. Finally, Harrington closed the file with deliberate calm. "I'll look into it." No promises, no urgency, just empty words hanging in the air like smoke. Grayson's hands balled into fists as he left, that hollow assurance ringing in his ears. He'd done his duty, handed the evidence to the proper authorities. What else could he do? The moment the door clicked shut, Harrington struck his silver lighter. The flame kissed the file's corner, hungrily consuming the pages and the truth they held. Within seconds, Grayson's hard-won evidence turned to ash in the detective's trash bin. Michael Harrington wasn't just another cop. He was the puppet master pulling the city's darkest strings: offshore bank accounts, shady political connections, a web of corruption leading straight to Black Widow's door. He wasn't merely covering up a murder, he'd orchestrated the entire frame job. Miller and Donovan, former Black Widow operatives who knew too much. Harper? The perfect patsy to take the fall. But Grayson's meddling was becoming problematic. The glove, the DNA, the dogged persistence. These loose ends threatened to unravel everything. Harrington watched the last ember die in the ashtray. He'd buried bigger problems before. One more disappearance wouldn't raise eyebrows. Not when he controlled which cases got attention. His phone buzzed with a coded message. Only 2 words: "Handle Hayes." A slow smile spread across his face as he reached for his service revolver. Some cops carried theirs loaded with bullets. His, loaded with blanks, perfect for staging self-defense shootings. The game was far from over, and Michael Harrington always played to win. Grayson walked with deliberate slowness, hands buried deep in his coat pockets, his lowered face a shield against curious glances. The night air carried the metallic tang of recent rain, but nothing could cut through the dread pressing against his ribs. This hadn't just been about delivering evidence. It had been a trap laid for Harrington himself. If the detective was clean, Harper might stand a chance. If not, well, Grayson would soon know exactly how deep the corruption ran. Rex moved beside him like a shadow, every muscle coiled with quiet vigilance. The dog's ears twitched at distant sounds no human could detect, those same instincts that had warned them of danger before. Grayson's fingers brushed the concealed recorder in his pocket, still running. Let Harrington think the evidence was destroyed. The truth was safely transmitted elsewhere. His phone vibrated violently. Ethan's message burned across the screen. "What the hell are you doing? You just painted a target on your back." Grayson typed a single word: necessary. The immediate callback wasn't surprising. Ethan's voice came through tight with panic. "Do you have a death wish? If Harrington's dirty, he won't just let you walk away knowing—" "I know," Grayson interrupted, watching Rex's sudden stillness. The dog's focus had locked onto a parked sedan with blacked-out windows 30 yards ahead. Every hair along the shepherd's spine stood rigid. They've been watching since day one. The letters, the figures in the shadows, Rex's warnings. This just forces their hand. A sharp inhale from Ethan. "So what's your play?" "Confirmation." Grayson subtly changed direction toward a service alley, his free hand drifting toward his holster. Rex moved as his living shadow, a low growl building in his throat. "If Harrington's compromised, his people will come for me within the hour, and when they do," the sedan's engine growled to life, "we'll be ready." Across town, in an office that should have been empty, Michael Harrington stood in perfect darkness. The glow of a single monitor illuminated his face as he watched Grayson's movements through a live feed. His finger hovered over an encrypted contact labeled *cleanup crew*. "Should have stayed out of the shadows, Hayes," he murmured, pressing send. The only light in Harrington's office came from the small flame slowly eating through the file's edges. Michael Harrington lounged in his chair, watching as Grayson's evidence turned to curling black ash. No hurry, no concern. Everything was proceeding exactly as he'd orchestrated. The burner phone vibrated on the desk. Unknown caller. Harrington answered without greeting. "He's suspicious," rasped the voice on the line. "I know." Harrington watched an ember die. "It no longer matters." A pause. Then, "Next steps?" Harrington's eyes gleamed in the dark. "Terminate him." Under the sickly glow of streetlights, Grayson's knuckles stood white against the steering wheel. He knew surveillance, knew pursuit. But tonight's dread sat heavier in his gut, because this time he wasn't just being followed, he was prey. The evidence in his glove compartment wasn't just clues. It was a death warrant signed in Black Widow's ink, and their protectors in the system didn't take kindly to expose secrets. Rex sat rigid in the passenger seat, ears twitching at frequencies humans couldn't hear. The shepherd's low growl started 3 seconds before the engine roared behind them. Grayson's rearview mirror filled with black metal as the SUV accelerated unnaturally fast. The window slid down. Steel glinted. "Shit!" Gunfire exploded. Glass rained. Grayson stomped the gas as bullets chewed through his back seat. Rex flattened himself against the footwell without losing focus, those predator eyes locked on their hunters. The car fishtailed into an alley. More gunshots. Sparks danced off the pavement beside them. Grayson took a hard right into a service lane, but the SUV matched the maneuver effortlessly. Tires screamed. The gap closed. Then, impossible, Rex launched onto the passenger seat. His body collided with the steering wheel, forcing a violent left turn. Grayson didn't question. He amplified the motion, sending their car into a controlled skid that forced the SUV onto the shoulder. But Rex wasn't done. With a snarl that would have made wolves retreat, the K9 hurled himself at the shattered window. fangs bared, spit flying, a 70-pound fury daring the shooters to come closer. The gunman flinched, just for a heartbeat. A heartbeat was all Grayson needed. Grayson slammed the brakes. The car fishtailed, tires screaming as he wrenched the wheel hard left, just enough to squeeze into a crumbling alleyway barely wider than the car itself. A gunshot cracked. Rex yelped. Rex! Grayson's stomach dropped as he saw the dark streak bloom across the dog's shoulder. But the shepherd barely faltered. Ears still pricked forward, body coiled like a spring despite the wound. No time to stop, no time to think. Behind them, tires shrieked as their pursuers overshot the turn. Grayson stomped the accelerator, heart hammering against his ribs. At the next intersection, he killed the headlights and veered into an abandoned lot, sliding between derelict trucks like a shadow. Silence. The SUV roared past, taillights fading into the night. Only then did Grayson dare breathe. Rex panted heavily in the back seat, crimson streaking his ebony fur. The bullet had grazed his left shoulder, superficial but angry-looking. "Jesus, you stubborn bastard," Grayson whispered, fingers trembling as he checked the wound. Rex licked his hand once, those intelligent brown eyes saying everything words couldn't. "Keep going." The engine growled back to life. Grayson peeled onto the road, one hand steadying Rex as he sped toward the only safe place left, a rundown vet clinic on 5th Street. Lisa Cho had patched up enough canines to know when not to ask questions. Blood smeared the leather seats. Rex's paws twitched like he was still running, still fighting. That look in his eyes, not pain, not fear, but sheer purpose, made Grayson's throat tighten. This wasn't just a wounded animal. This was a soldier refusing to stand down. And those bastards would pay for every drop of his blood. The clinic doors burst open. Lisa looked up from sterilizing surgical tools, her practiced eyes instantly assessing the blood-streaking Rex's fur. Without a word, she pointed to the stainless steel exam table. Grayson laid Rex down, fingers lingering on the dog's head. Despite the ragged bullet graze across his shoulder, the shepherd remained preternaturally calm, ears pivoting like radar dishes, chest rising and falling in controlled bursts. Only the faint tremble in his hind legs betrayed the pain. Gunshot? Lisa's hands were already parting the matted fur. Superficial, but the muscles shredded. Need sutures now or it'll necrotize. She didn't wait for confirmation, snapping on gloves. Sedative first. As the needle slid into Rex's foreleg, those intelligent brown eyes locked onto Grayson. No whimper, no panic, just absolute trust. The same look he'd given Harper during training exercises, when a single glance conveyed entire strategies. The anesthesia took hold slowly. Rex fought it until the last second, eyelids drooping only when his body gave him no choice. Grayson's throat tightened. He'd seen officers take wounds with less composure. The suturing took 45 precise minutes. Grayson counted each stitch, Lisa's needle weaving through torn tissue with battlefield efficiency. His mind flashed to Harper's hands guiding Rex through obstacle courses, the effortless synchronicity between them. That bond hadn't broken with bars between them. Rex would bleed out before abandoning her. Done. Lisa stripped off her gloves. No running, no jumping for 7 days. Change the dressing. I know the drill. Grayson's palm settled between Rex's ears as consciousness returned. The dog's first act? A single lick across his scarred knuckles. Lisa studied them both. You're really going back out there. A shadow crossed Grayson's face. They shot my dog. 3 words carrying the weight of a declaration of war. Outside, the night smelled of gasoline and impending rain. Grayson bundled Rex into the back seat, his touch gentle even as fury vibrated through him. The bastards had made their move. Now, it was his turn. Rex shifted at Grayson's feet, his breathing steadier now but his body still healing. Grayson exhaled, tilting his face toward the indifferent stars. "We're just getting started, partner." The makeshift office hummed with quiet intensity. Papers covered every surface, bank records, crime scene photos, timelines, all weaving together into a tapestry of corruption that chilled Grayson to the bone. Ethan's fingers danced across his laptop, illuminating transactions that shouldn't exist. "This goes way beyond Harper," he murmured, his screen reflecting in his glasses. "We're looking at a professional killing machine. And at the center?" He turned the screen. "Deputy Chief Richard Vaughn." Grayson's grip tightened on the documents. Vaughn's name appeared like clockwork, always before or after a hit, always followed by suspicious deposits. The numbers told a damning story. The city's top cop wasn't just protecting Black Widow, he was their paymaster. "Harrington's his attack dog," Ethan continued, pulling up another file. "Every time Vaughn needs evidence to disappear, Harrington's offshore account gets fatter." The memory burned. Harrington's cold eyes as he took the bloody glove, his practiced nod of feigned concern. Grayson had played right into his hands. But then Ethan slid a different report across the desk. He missed something. A tiny square of fabric, the glove fragment Grayson had secretly kept. The lab results were undeniable. DNA from Jonas Quaid, a known Black Widow operative. Rex lifted his head, sensing the shift in the room. Those keen eyes had led them to every breakthrough, the alley, the glove, the ambush. The dog was more than a partner. He was their compass in this darkness. Grayson stood abruptly, the chair scraping against concrete. "Vaughn's untouchable right now. But Harrington?" He grabbed his jacket, the fabric still stained with Rex's blood from their last encounter. "Harrington thinks he's won. That makes him vulnerable." As he stepped into the night, the weight of what came next settled on his shoulders. Every minute brought Harper closer to execution. Every move risked Rex's life again. Then, like a gunshot in the silence, his phone buzzed with an alert that changed everything. Ethan's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his question hanging in the air like smoke. "What are you going to do?" Grayson's gaze dropped to Rex. The dog lay motionless but alert, those keen eyes tracking every shift in the room. In that moment, Grayson saw it all. The alley discovery, the glove, the bullet graze that should have killed them both. Without Rex, he'd be just another body in Black Widow's wake. A plan crystallized. "Harrington thinks he's safe," Grayson said, rolling the forensic report into his fist. "That's his weakness." He stood abruptly, the chair screeching. "We don't need Vaughn yet, just his attack dog." As he stepped into the night, the weight of Harper's ticking clock pressed down. Every lead had brought them closer, yet the puzzle remained incomplete. Then, like lightning, the news alert flashed: "Senator found dead." Evidence points to Grayson Hayes, security footage, fingerprints, an eyewitness. The same flawless frame job that buried Harper now turned on him. Police cruisers skidded into his street, floodlights cutting through the dark. Grayson whistled. Two sharp notes Rex knew well. The shepherd launched toward a crumbling wall, clearing it in one fluid bound. Grayson followed, his palms scraping rough concrete as he hauled himself over. They hit the alley running. Shouted commands echoed behind them. Grayson's breath came ragged, but Rex moved with terrifying precision, every twitch of his ears mapping their pursuers' positions. The dog wasn't just an advantage. He was their only way out. Rex's instincts were their lifeline. The dog moved with uncanny precision, his ears twitching at threats Grayson couldn't yet perceive. As they sprinted through the maze of alleys, Grayson's lungs burned, but his mind raced faster. They couldn't run forever. Then Rex stopped dead. His nose quivered, testing the air. Without warning, the shepherd veered sharply left. "Rex!" Grayson hissed, but the dog was already moving. Trusting his partner, Grayson followed. They emerged at a derelict warehouse, its rusted door screeching like a wounded animal when Rex pawed at it. Inside, the stench of chemicals assaulted Grayson's nose. Engine oil, burning plastic, something acrid he couldn't name. Moonlight bled through broken roof panels, illuminating rows of faces. Grayson's stomach dropped. The masks were perfect replicas, every pore, every wrinkle rendered in grotesque detail. And there, staring back at him with empty eyes, was his own face. Rex's sudden growl snapped him alert. A shoe scuffed concrete in the shadows. Grayson's pistol cleared its holster before he'd fully turned. "Show yourself," he barked, finger tightening on the trigger. The figure froze when Grayson's warning shot sparked off the wall beside him. As the man turned, his hood fell back to reveal a smirk that made Grayson's blood run cold. "Took you long enough, Hayes." The stranger's hand flicked toward his waistband. "Pity you won't live to tell." Rex launched like a black missile, teeth sinking into the man's forearm before he could draw. The object he'd been holding clattered to the floor, a spherical device with a blinking red light. Grayson barely had time to shout, "Down!" before the world exploded in white heat. The smoke grenade detonated with a hollow thump, spewing thick white clouds that swallowed the warehouse whole. Grayson dropped to one knee, pulling Rex close as the choking haze swirled around them. Somewhere in the blinding fog, footsteps pounded toward an exit. "Rex! Halt!" Grayson coughed out the command, his grip tightening on the dog's harness. Rex obeyed instantly, though his entire body trembled with barely restrained fury, a low growl rumbling through his chest like distant thunder. When the smoke cleared, their attacker had vanished, but the evidence remained. Grayson's flashlight beam swept across the work tables, illuminating rows of biological masks suspended on metal stands. Each was a masterpiece of grotesque artistry. Pores, wrinkles, even individual eyelashes rendered with terrifying precision. His stomach lurched when the light found his own face staring back at him. Son of a... The replica was flawless, right down to the faint scar above his eyebrow from the Jenkins case last year. Rex sniffed at it and whined, tail stiff. Grayson ran trembling fingers over the mask's surface. It felt disturbingly alive, warm, slightly moist, with the elastic give of real skin. Now he understood how they'd framed Harper, and now they were doing it to him. Rex suddenly stiffened, his nose twitching toward a shadowed corner. Grayson's pistol cleared its holster before he consciously registered the movement. "Come out slow," he barked, finger hovering over the trigger. A figure detached itself from the darkness, a wiry man in a black hoodie, his face half obscured by the dim light. The stranger's lips curled into a smirk that didn't reach his dead eyes. "Should have taken the warning, Hayes." His hand flicked toward his waistband. Rex moved like lightning. 70 pounds of trained muscle launched through the air, teeth clamping onto the man's forearm with a sickening crunch. The would-be assassin screamed, a small metallic object clattering to the concrete floor. Grayson's blood turned to ice. Grenade. He grabbed Rex's collar and dove behind a metal cabinet as the flashbang erupted. The concussion wave rattled his teeth, white-hot pain lancing through his skull. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard retreating footsteps. Rex was on his feet first, shaking his head like he could dislodge the noise. Grayson staggered up, wiping blood from his nose. The attacker was gone. But the masks were everything. He snapped photos with trembling hands, the camera flash making the lifeless faces seem to twitch. Rex pressed against his leg, warm and solid and real. The only thing keeping him grounded in this nightmare. Meanwhile, Stonegate Maximum Security Prison. Harper Calloway counted the cracks in her cell ceiling for the 47th time. The numbers never changed. 12 major fractures spiderwebbing out from the corner where the roof sagged. Like her life, reduced to immutable facts. 1. Arrested for murder she didn't commit. 2. Convicted by evidence that couldn't exist. 3. Scheduled to die in 9 days. The stench of industrial cleaner couldn't mask the underlying odors of sweat, rust, and despair. Harper breathed through her mouth, her back against the cold concrete wall. Sleep was impossible, not with the fluorescent light buzzing incessantly overhead, not with the guard's boots clanging down the corridor every 27 minutes. Her fingers absently traced the frayed edge of her standard issue blanket. The fabric was thin enough to see through, yet somehow retained every smell imaginable. She focused on the tactile sensation, anything to keep from screaming. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Rex as a puppy, tripping over his own oversized paws during their first training exercise. How he'd gotten right back up, determined to master the agility course. That same determination had saved her life 3 times in the field. Now she imagined him in some sterile kennel, confused and alone. Did he think she'd abandoned him? The thought carved something hollow in her chest. From the adjacent cell, a woman sobbed quietly. Harper closed her eyes and let her head thunk against the wall. Somewhere out there, Grayson was fighting for her. And Rex would never stop searching. That knowledge was the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. The day Rex passed his first evidence search test, Harper had swept him into her arms, his warm body wriggling with excitement. She could still feel the coarse texture of his fur under her fingers, the way his entire backside wagged with such force that her coffee cup rattled dangerously on the table. "That's my brilliant boy," she'd whispered into his ear, feeding him the liver treat he loved so much. The pride in his golden eyes had outshone any medal or commendation she'd ever received. Now, lying on the prison cot's scratchy blanket, Harper's throat tightened. Who would praise Rex now when he found hidden evidence? Who would scratch that special spot behind his ears when he alerted to danger? The thought of him waiting endlessly in some cold kennel, paws pressed against chain-link fencing, watching for a handler who would never come. It carved something hollow beneath her ribs. "It can't end like this." Her whisper bounced off the concrete walls. They wouldn't just abandon Rex. They couldn't. But the men who'd framed her weren't the type to leave loose ends. If they'd gone this far to silence her, what would stop them from? Harper shot upright, the sudden motion making her shackles clank. Her breath came in short bursts as the nightmare image crystallized. Rex alone in a concrete run, his water bowl overturned, his once glossy coat matted. Those intelligent eyes dull with confusion as days passed without training, without purpose, without her. The chain around her wrists bit into flesh as she clenched her fists. However impossible it seemed, she had to fight, not just for her own life, but for the soulful creature who'd taken a bullet for her last year. Rex didn't understand betrayal or conspiracies. He only knew loyalty, and that loyalty would destroy him if she didn't. A jangle of keys interrupted her thoughts. Harper schooled her face into blankness as the guard passed her cell. Only when his footsteps faded did she let the mask slip, pressing her forehead against the icy metal bars. The prison stench, industrial cleaner over rotting food and hopelessness, burned her nostrils. She'd counted every crack in these walls, 37 major fissures, every flicker of the failing fluorescent light, 12 per minute. But numbers couldn't drown out the memories. Rex's warning growl seconds before an ambush, The way he'd positioned himself between her and gunfire during the cartel raid, his cold nose nudging her awake from nightmares. If he were here now, he'd be pacing this 6 by 8 cell, hackles raised at every approaching guard. The thought almost made her smile. Almost. Harper turned her face toward the sliver of hallway light creeping under the door. Somewhere beyond these walls, her dog was fighting for her, and that meant she had to fight twice as hard. The system she'd sworn to protect had failed them both, but Harper Calloway had learned two unshakable truths in her years as an officer. 1. There's always a weak spot in the armor. 2. No one outstubborned a K9 handler and her dog. She closed her eyes, envisioning Rex's determined stare. When sleep finally came, it wasn't the guard's footsteps she dreamed of, but the rhythmic click of canine nails on concrete growing steadily closer. The metallic screech of the cell door jerked Harper from her thoughts. A guard shoved a tray through the bars, the usual fare: congealed soup swimming in grease, bread hard enough to crack teeth, water in a cup so thin she could crush it with one hand. She reached for the tray automatically, then froze. A prickle crawled up her spine, the same instinct Rex got when danger lurked just beyond human senses. Her fingers hovered over the spoon as Martha, her cellmate, let out a derisive snort. Not eating? The woman's eyes gleamed with desperate hunger. Harper pushed the tray toward her. All yours. Martha didn't need convincing. She seized the bowl, gulping the soup with the frantic urgency of the long-starved. Harper watched dispassionately as the woman tore into the bread until Martha's hand suddenly flew to her throat. The choking started quietly. Then Martha's entire body convulsed, her spine arching unnaturally as foam bubbled between her lips. She crashed to the concrete, limbs thrashing like a marionette with cut strings. Harper's muscles locked. The spoon clattered to the floor, its hollow ring echoing through the cell. That should have been me. Boots pounded down the corridor. Guards burst in, their shouts muffled as Harper's pulse roared in her ears. One officer pressed fingers to Martha's neck, then shot Harper a look that could have melted steel. What the hell did you do? Harper's gaze dropped to the spilled soup, seeping into the cracks between tiles. The broth had separated into iridescent swirls, unnatural colors no real food produced. I didn't touch it, she said, her voice eerily calm despite the ice spreading through her veins. She took it from me. As medics hauled Martha's twitching body away, Harper studied the guards' faces. No shock, no confusion, just calculation. The realization hit like a rifle butt to the ribs. This wasn't just an attack. It was a test. Someone powerful enough to poison prisoners was probing her defenses, seeing how far they'd need to go to silence her permanently. And if they'd go this far for her? Rex's face flashed in her mind, those golden eyes watching the courtroom as they dragged him away. Would they dose his food next? Stage an accident during training? The image of him convulsing like Martha sent white-hot fury through her shackled wrists. Somewhere beyond these walls, her dog was fighting for her, and she'd be damned if she didn't return the favor. Harper waited until the last guard left before crouching beside the contaminated tray. With her fingernail, she scraped a drop of tainted soup onto a frayed thread from her blanket. Evidence. Rex had taught her that much. If not for Rex's memory sharpening her instincts, Harper would have swallowed that poisoned soup without hesitation. Her fingers curled into fists so tight the shackle chains bit into her wrists. They thought imprisonment had broken her, that she'd be an easy, silent kill. How wrong they were. She stared through the rusted bars at the endless prison corridor, her whisper cutting through the stale air. I won't die quietly. Michael Harrington's office smelled of gun oil and forgery. The desk lamp's jaundiced light carved shadows across his face as he flipped through the Harper Calloway file. his masterpiece of fabricated evidence. Every staged crime scene photo, every doctored lab report, every coerced witness statement, the burner phone vibrated. Vaughn's signature ringtone. Harrington exhaled smoke before answering. "Talk to me." Grayson found the mask lab. Vaughn's voice could frost hell. "He's one document away from proving Calloway was framed." The cigarette between Harrington's fingers snapped. "What evidence exactly?" "A goddamn bioprinter, with Hayes's face half-finished on the work table." Papers shuffled on Vaughn's end. If he connects it to the senator's murder, this whole house of cards collapses. Harrington's polished shoe tapped a staccato rhythm against the desk drawer where he kept a loaded Glock. He'd known this day would come, just not so soon. The original plan had been elegant. Let Harper rot until the world forgot her, then a quiet suicide in her cell. But Vaughn's patience had expired with the senator's last breath. "I've tried twice already," Harrington said, tracing the knife scar on his palm, a reminder from his first cover-up. "The food poisoning, the staged riot. She's resilient." "Then stop playing games." Vaughn's pause lasted just long enough to underscore the threat. "Executions moved up. 72 hours?" Harrington's cufflinks clicked against the phone. "There are protocols." "Handled." The line crackled with Vaughn's smirk. "Warden's on board. Judge signed the order an hour ago. Official reason?" A chair creaked. "Inmate Calloway poses an ongoing threat to prison security." The lie tasted like bile. Harrington stared at the case file's cover photo. Harper in her patrol uniform, Rex seated proudly at her side. That damn dog had survived 3 assassination attempts already. "Clean this up, Michael." Vaughn's tone left no room for debate, or the next face on that printer will be yours. The call died. Harrington lit another cigarette with steady hands. The plan was flawless. The evidence buried. The witnesses silenced. So why did he keep seeing golden canine eyes watching from the shadows? Harrington placed the phone down slowly, the plastic clicking against his mahogany desk. The office air hummed with the fluorescent lights overhead, casting long shadows across the case files. Vaughn's words echoed in his skull. 3 days. But something deeper than professional caution made his fingers tremble. He pressed them flat against the desk, staring at the framed police badge on his wall. 23 years of service, all about to implode because of one stubborn cop and her damn dog. Across the city, Grayson Hayes slammed his fist onto the rusted warehouse work table, making the biological masks jump. Rex's ears flattened at the sudden noise, but his golden eyes remained locked on his handler. The encrypted message glowed on Grayson's phone. Execution moved to 72 hours. Vaughn signed the order himself. Rex's growl started low in his chest, building to a vibration Grayson could feel through his boots. The dog's scarred shoulder, still healing from the bullet graze, twitched as he paced. Grayson crouched, running his hands through Rex's thick fur. "We're not losing her," he whispered. The dog's wet nose pressed against his temple in silent agreement. Steel doors clanged shut down the prison corridor. Harper Calloway didn't flinch. She sat cross-legged on her bunk, methodically unraveling a thread from her prison-issue blanket. The guard's whispers had reached her hours ago. Special order, Vaughn's signature, 3 days. But her hands remained steady. The fluorescent light buzzed like a trapped insect. Harper closed her eyes and pictured Rex's face the last time they'd trained together. Tongue lolling, eyes bright with the joy of the chase. That memory anchored her as she began weaving the thread into a crude lockpick. Dinner trays rattled outside her cell. Harper watched the new guard, Officer Dern, through her lashes, young, nervous. The way his fingers tapped his thigh holster betrayed his inexperience. "Hey, pretty boy," Harper called, lounging against the bars. "Heard you got transferred after losing evidence in the cartel case." She saw his jaw tighten. "Must burn knowing you're just Vaughn's errand boy now." Dern's face flushed beet red. "Shut your mouth, inmate." "Or what?" Harper smirked, twirling the makeshift lockpick between her fingers. "You'll cry to Harrington like you did when—" The cell door screeched open. Dern lunged, baton raised, exactly as Harper's years of patrol experience predicted. She moved like she had Rex at her back. 1. Sidestepped the baton. 2. Palm strike to the solar plexus. 3. Knee to the groin as he doubled over, keys jangled to the concrete. The emergency alarm wailed as Harper snatched them, her heart pounding in sync with the shrill bell. Chaos erupted. Inmates howled. A guard tackled her from behind, but Harper rolled with the impact, just like Rex had taught her during takedown drills. Her elbow connected with a nose. Warm blood splattered her jumpsuit. The fire exit groaned open under Dern's stolen keycard. Cold night air slapped Harper's face as she burst into the prison yard. Spotlights swept the asphalt. A rookie cop gaped at her from an idling cruiser, his big gulp soda tipping over as he scrambled for his radio. Harper moved without thought, sprinting crouched like Rex on a scent trail, tackling low like Rex taking down a suspect, ignoring the gunshots that kicked up concrete near her feet. The engine roared to life as she wrenched the gear shift. Somewhere in the darkness, she swore she heard a familiar bark. The stolen cruiser's engine screamed as Harper fishtailed onto the interstate, her rearview mirror filled with pulsating red and blue lights. Bullets pinged off the trunk. One shattered the back windshield, spraying glass like diamond dust across the seats. Her fingers slipped on the sweat-slick steering wheel. No vest, no backup, no Rex's warm bulk pressed against her thigh to steady her aim like during their patrol days. Somewhere behind her, police radios crackled to life. "All units. Suspect is Calloway, armed and extremely dangerous." Harper's laugh came out ragged. Dangerous. If only they knew how many department barbecues she'd organized, how many rookies she'd trained, how many nights she'd spent curled around Rex in the K9 kennels after his surgery. A new alert blared from the cruiser's computer, Dern's login still active. Her breath hitched as the screen populated with roadblock coordinates. Every major artery downtown was sealed, except her thumb hovered over an unmarked side route winding toward the riverfront, an old K9 training path Rex had memorized as a pup. The steering wheel groaned as she wrenched it left, the car mounting the curb in a shower of sparks. Tires caught asphalt just as an armored SWAT vehicle rounded the corner behind her. Grayson's coffee cup hit the floor in a brown explosion. The burner phone shook in his hand as his informant's words registered. "Calloway's out. Took down 2 guards. Headed northeast in a stolen unit." Rex was already at the door, his scarred shoulder twitching, the bullet wound from their last firefight still healing. The dog's nostrils flared as if he could scent Harper's desperation through concrete and distance. "Intel says she's heading for—" Grayson's voice died as Rex suddenly stiffened, his head cocking toward the map on the wall, right where the old K9 training grounds bordered the industrial district. The dog's whine said everything. Harper wasn't running blindly. She was following their playbook. Grayson grabbed the evidence files with one hand, Rex's leash with the other. "Time to bring our girl home." Rain sheeted across the windshield as Harper's cruiser barreled down the abandoned service road. The headlights illuminated a nightmare tableau: rusted factory gates, chain-link fences topped with razor wire, and suddenly, blindingly, an unmarked SUV blocking the road. Harper stomped the brakes. The world narrowed to the Glock digging into her ribs and the acrid taste of adrenaline on her tongue. Silence. Then, impossibly, a sound that stopped her heart. A single echoing bark. Not the sharp cough of a trained police dog, but the deeper woof that used to shake their apartment walls when Rex smelled breakfast cooking. Harper's breath came in ragged gasps. Either she was hallucinating from blood loss or a shadow moved near the SUV's front tire. A familiar silhouette with one ear permanently kinked from that knife fight in the docks. Rex stepped into the headlight's glow, his golden eyes locked on hers. Not a hallucination, not a ghost. Her partner, her family. And standing beside him, gripping a shotgun with grim determination, Grayson Hayes. The passenger door flew open. "Get in!" Grayson shouted over the approaching sirens. "We've got about 90 seconds before this whole place is swarming." Harper didn't hesitate. She was moving before her brain fully processed the miracle, Rex's wet nose pressing against her cheek as she tumbled into the seat, his familiar weight settling protectively across her lap as Grayson floored it into the night. The bark cut through the night like a gunshot. Harper spun toward the sound, her pulse hammering in her throat. There, at the edge of the police perimeter's floodlights, stood Grayson, and beside him, quivering with barely restrained energy, Rex. The dog's bark rang out again, deeper than she remembered, his muscular body coiled like a spring. Even from 30 yards away, she could see the way his scarred shoulder twitched, the same wound he'd gotten protecting her during that botched drug bust last winter. His tail gave 3 frantic wags before stiffening, combat ready. Harper's knees nearly buckled. After months in that concrete cage, after poisonings and staged riots, after believing she'd never see him again, there he was, still hers, still fighting for her. "Harper Calloway." The megaphone's static distorted the command. "Drop your weapon and raise your hands." Blue and red lights strobed across the scene, painting Rex's fur in alternating hues. Harper's fingers ached to bury themselves in that familiar scruff, to feel his warm breath on her neck like when he'd wake her from nightmares by licking her ear. Rex lunged forward, nearly yanking Grayson off his feet. The dog's claws scraped asphalt as he strained against the leash, a raw, guttural sound building in his chest. Not a trained canine alert, but the primal cry of a companion watching his person being taken. Again. Grayson locked eyes with Harper across the chaos, no words needed. She gave the slightest nod, just a dip of her chin she'd used 100 times in the field when things went sideways. Go, protect Rex, live to fight another day. The handcuffs bit into Harper's wrists as officers forced her to her knees. Rex's barking turned shrill, desperate. She craned her neck to keep him in view as they dragged her toward the squad car, memorizing the way his ears flattened against his skull, the white showing around his amber irises. Then came the sound that would haunt Grayson for years. Rex's howl. Not the disciplined tone of a police dog, but the broken wail of a creature whose heart had been cleaved in two. The shepherd threw his full weight against the leash, teeth bared at the officers holding Harper, until Grayson wrapped both arms around his heaving torso. "Easy, soldier," Grayson murmured into Rex's neck, though his own voice cracked. He felt the dog's heartbeat rabbiting against his forearm, saw the drool dripping from his jaws as he panted in distress. "She's buying us time. Don't make it worthless." The squad car door slammed. Through the rain-streaked window, Harper pressed one palm to the glass. Rex let out a final, choked whimper and stretched his nose toward her, as if his love alone could bridge the distance, the steel, the injustice. As the car pulled away, Grayson didn't bother wiping his face. The rain would hide it, but nothing could mask the way Rex's entire body shuddered when Harper's scent finally dissipated on the wind. The police cruiser's interior smelled of stale sweat and gun oil. Harper pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching streetlights blur into streaks of orange as they left the city behind. No Miranda rights, no processing paperwork, just the silent exchange between the two officers up front, a glance that said cleanup detail. Her handcuffs dug deeper with every pothole. Harper focused on the pain, using it to map their route. 1. Left onto County Road, 17, that pothole by the old gas station. 2. 20 minutes northwest, judging by the moon's position. 3. Into the industrial wasteland where the city dumped its secrets. When the car finally stopped, the silence was louder than any siren. Harper's pulse thundered in her ears as the door swung open to reveal a landscape of skeletal warehouses. One flickering sodium lamp cast long shadows across rusted shipping containers stacked like graves. Move. The officer's grip bit into her bicep. Harper's boots crunched on broken glass as they marched her toward a warehouse with boarded-up windows. Then, that voice, smooth as oiled steel slithering from the darkness. Bring her inside. Richard Vaughn emerged from the shadows, his dress shoes gleaming despite the grime. The deputy chief's tie was perfectly knotted, his smile the kind she'd seen him give at press conferences before announcing an officer's death in the line of duty. The warehouse door screeched open. Harper's eyes adjusted to the gloom, picking out shapes. A metal chair bolted to the concrete floor, frayed ropes coiled like snakes beside it. Dark stains radiating outward from the drain grate. Vaughn removed his suit jacket, folding it neatly over a crate. "You've caused quite a stir, Calloway." He rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle no desk job could explain. "Pity it ends here." Harper's mouth went dry, but her voice didn't waver. "Where's the paperwork, sir? Or are we skipping the formalities tonight?" The first blow came from behind, a nightstick to the kidneys. Harper collapsed to her knees, gasping. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Vaughn's polished loafers click closer. "You always were too smart for your own good." He crouched, grabbing her chin. "But not smart enough to—" A sound cut through the warehouse, distant at first, then building, the unmistakable whump-whump of helicopter blades. Vaughn's head snapped up. Harper seized the distraction, driving her forehead into his nose with a satisfying crunch. As he staggered back, the warehouse doors exploded inward. Grayson Hayes charged through the smoke with Rex unleashed at his side, the dog's muzzle wrinkled in a snarl, his bullet-scarred shoulder bunching as he locked onto Vaughn. The last thing Harper saw before the world dissolved into gunfire and shouting was Rex's eyes, burning with the same fury as the day they'd dragged him from her courtroom. The single hanging bulb swayed slightly, casting grotesque shadows that slithered across Vaughn's face as he circled the iron table. Its surface was pitted with old stains, some rust, others darker. Harper's nostrils flared at the coppery tang beneath the warehouse's mildew stench. Calloway. Vaughn's polished Oxfords clicked against concrete as he stopped beside the table. His suit probably cost more than her monthly salary, the fabric barely whispering as he moved. "You've impressed me." His smile showed teeth. Not many could escape Stonegate only to wind up back in custody. Harper kept her breathing even. The ropes binding her wrists had been soaked in something sticky. Salt water, maybe, designed to tighten with every struggle. Her fingers already tingled from cut-off circulation. Vaughn leaned down, his aftershave reeking of sandalwood and something medicinal. "What do you know?" Harper tilted her head, mimicking his false curiosity. "Know about what? Your questionable taste in ties?" The backhand came fast. Harper's head snapped sideways, the taste of blood blooming on her tongue. Vaughn straightened his cuffs without missing a beat. "Strong wills fascinate me." He traced a finger along the table's edge, but even tempered steel breaks under enough pressure. One of his men, a hulking figure with prison tattoos, stepped forward with a syringe. The liquid inside caught the light, glowing ominously. Harper's stomach clenched. Not for herself, but for the image flashing behind her eyes, Rex's trusting gaze as she'd scratched his favorite spot behind the ears. Grayson's stubborn jaw set in determination. They were still out there fighting. Vaughn's smile widened as if he could read her thoughts. "Ah, you're wondering about Hayes and your furry little problem." He plucked the syringe from his enforcer. "Don't worry, I have a special team handling them." The needle glinted. Harper's muscles locked. This wasn't just interrogation. It was a message. Whatever they injected her with would be untraceable. Another tragic inmate death. Vaughn leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "You'll tell me everything. Or by dawn, your dog will be picking chunks of Hayes's brains out of his teeth." Harper's vision tunneled. Every instinct screamed to lunge, ropes be damned. But then, faint at first, a sound cut through the warehouse's silence. A rhythmic click, click, click of canine nails on concrete. Vaughn froze. His enforcers reached for their weapons. Harper's lips curled into a bloody smile. The barking started a second before the warehouse doors exploded inward. The warehouse air thickened as Vaughn's laughter died in his throat. Harper's words hung between them like a guillotine blade. He straightened his tie with deliberate slowness, the silk whispering against his starched collar. "You think justice will win, Calloway?" Vaughn's polished shoe tapped a rhythm on the concrete, the same impatient cadence Harper had noticed during his courtroom testimonies. He leaned down until his aftershave stung her nostrils. "Justice is a bedtime story. The strong tell the weak." Harper's bound hands twitched against the ropes, not from fear, but from the memory of Rex's weight settling against her hip during thunderstorms, his warm breath steadying her pulse. That loyalty couldn't be fabricated, couldn't be bought. "You can imprison me," she said, meeting Vaughn's gaze without blinking. Blood from her split lip dotted the table between them. "But you can't stop what's coming." Vaughn's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see." A snap of his fingers. The burly enforcer yanked a black hood over Harper's head, plunging her world into suffocating darkness. Rough hands dragged her upright. Somewhere beyond these walls, Rex was tracking her scent. She clung to that certainty as they shoved her forward. Grayson's knuckles turned white around his phone. The investigation hub, a converted storage room in Ethan's basement, smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Maps and documents papered every surface, red strings connecting Vaughn to Black Widow, to the senator's murder. Ethan's laptop glowed in the dim light. "No intake records," he confirmed, tapping the screen. "No transport logs. Harper never reached Stonegate." The implications settled over Grayson like a shroud. He'd seen enough black site operations to know what this meant. His thumb hovered over Jake Carter's contact, one of the last honest cops in the precinct. The call connected on the second ring. "Grayson?" Jake's voice was gravel wrapped in exhaustion. "It's 2 a.m. Harper's not at the prison." Grayson's voice cracked. "I need to know where they took her." Silence stretched. Grayson could picture Jake running a hand over his close-cropped hair, weighing loyalty against self-preservation. When he finally spoke, each word came measured. "Warehouse district. Old meatpacking plant off Route 9. A pause. "Grayson, there's no paperwork on this one." The line went dead. Grayson was already moving, his boots crunching over discarded energy drink cans. He grabbed two things from the table, his service pistol and Rex's leash. The German shepherd stood at attention, his bullet-scarred shoulder twitching. Those golden eyes held no hesitation, no doubt. only the same fierce determination Harper had nurtured in him since puppyhood. Grayson clipped the leash. Find her. Rex's answering growl shook the windows. Listen, Jake said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The phone line crackled with static. I can't say much over the phone, but I have what you need. Grayson's grip turned vice-like around the device. Say it. A sharp inhale, then words so quiet they barely registered. I planted a tracker on Harper before she was taken, just in case. Didn't expect to actually need it. Grayson's pulse roared in his ears. Do you have the coordinates? I do. But we have to move fast. If I can track her, Vaughn's people can find out what I've done. Ethan's chair screeched as he stood, eyes locked on Grayson. No time, no options. Send me the coordinates now, Grayson barked, already shrugging into his jacket. I'll handle the rest. Jake's exhale shuddered through the receiver. Be careful. We're dealing with people who won't hesitate to kill. The call died. A second later, Grayson's screen lit up with coordinates. Ethan's fingers flew across his laptop. This isn't a police facility, he muttered, pulling up satellite images. Abandoned industrial zone, 30 miles outside city limits. Grayson's keys jangled in his fist. We leave now. As he wrenched open the car door, a familiar click-click of nails on pavement froze him mid-motion. Rex stood haloed by porch light, his golden eyes burning with intent. The dog's tail gave one decisive flick, not a wag, but a declaration. Grayson knelt, fingers sinking into the thick fur behind Rex's ears. I know you want to go, he murmured, thumb brushing the healing bullet graze. But this could be, Ethan cut in, arms crossed. You really think you can leave him behind? He knows what's happening better than we do. Silence stretched. Grayson studied the dog, really studied him. The way Rex's muscles quivered with restrained energy, the intelligence in those eyes that had seen through more lies than most detectives. This wasn't just a K9. This was the partner who'd unearthed the glove with Quaid's DNA, led them to the bioprinter warehouse. Taken a bullet without hesitation. Rex huffed, warm breath fogging the night air as he nudged Grayson's knee. The message was clear. Try to stop me. Grayson opened the back door. Load up. Rex wasn't just a partner. He was the beating heart of their team. Grayson exhaled sharply, remembering K9s he'd seen drag themselves across bloodied concrete to reach fallen handlers. That loyalty went beyond training. It was a sacred bond written in bone and blood. And now, despite the healing wound on his shoulder, Rex stood ready, not for the hunt, but for her. He sensed Harper's danger in ways no human could, his world woven with scents and sounds invisible to them. Grayson knelt until they were eye to eye. Rex's breath came steady, his warm exhales ghosting over Grayson's knuckles. No whimper, no hesitation, just that unblinking amber gaze, brighter than the dashboard lights, waiting. He'd seen that look before. When Rex had sniffed out the bomb vest during the City Hall siege, when he'd leapt between Harper and a meth head's knife, when he'd limped 3 miles on a broken paw to lead them to a missing child. If Grayson left him now, the dog would haunt that doorway for days, ears drooping, nails clicking restlessly against the floorboards. The silent accusation would be worse than any bark. All right. Grayson's voice roughened. Let's go. Rex launched into the back seat in one fluid motion, his claws scraping the upholstery as he pivoted to face forward. No playful panting now, just the rigid posture of a soldier locking onto coordinates. The tires screeched as they peeled onto the highway. Streetlights strobed through the windows, painting Rex's profile in fleeting gold. Ears pricked, muzzle slightly parted to taste the night air rushing through the cracked window. He didn't need GPS coordinates. Every fiber of him was already reaching for Harper. Grayson's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. The GPS blinked relentlessly, counting down the miles to that abandoned industrial zone. Ethan's knee bounced beside him, fingers drumming an erratic rhythm on his laptop. No one spoke. The hum of the engine underscored the tension thickening between them. Each mile marker passed was a second shaved off Harper's dwindling time. In the back seat, Rex stood braced against the turns, his weight shifting effortlessly with the car's momentum. His nose pressed to the glass, whiskers twitching at phantom scents. He didn't understand the glowing screen, but the tightening in Grayson's shoulders told him everything. The road narrowed, buildings giving way to skeletal warehouses. Grayson killed the headlights half a mile out, relying on moonlight. Rex's low growl vibrated through the seats. He smelled it before they saw it. Blood. Gun oil. Her. The car hadn't fully stopped before Rex was at the door, his claws scoring the leather. Grayson met those blazing eyes in the rearview mirror and knew. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. It was a reckoning. The car rolled to a silent stop behind a rusted shipping container. Grayson killed the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the pounding of his pulse. Before them loomed the warehouse, its broken windows like sightless eyes, the corrugated metal walls sagging under decades of neglect. Only two guards stood at the entrance, their postures slack, rifles slung carelessly across their backs as they shared a cigarette. Ethan's whisper cut through the dark. "Are they not careful?" Grayson's fingers tightened around his knife. This wasn't right. A prisoner like Harper should have required a SWAT team to contain. Either Vaughn was arrogantly overconfident, or this was a trap. A subtle glance at Rex. The dog melted into the shadows before Grayson could blink, his black fur making him nearly invisible in the moonless night. Grayson and Ethan moved in sync. Years of partnered operations distilled into silent footsteps and controlled breathing. Rex struck first. A blur of snarling fur launched at the nearest guard. The man barely had time to widen his eyes before 80 pounds of trained muscle hit him like a freight train. His rifle clattered to the ground as Rex's teeth found purchase in his forearm. Grayson was there before the first drop of blood hit the dirt. His knife hand swung in a precise arc, the weighted pommel connecting with the base of the guard's skull. The man folded like a marionette with cut strings. The second guard spun, mouth opening to shout. Ethan's palm struck his throat with surgical precision, crushing the warning cry before it could form. Grayson's arm snaked around the choking man's neck, applying just enough pressure to send him into darkness. 12 seconds. No alarms. No gunfire. "Good job, old friend," Grayson murmured, running a hand down Rex's heaving flank. The dog's nostrils flared, his attention already locked on the warehouse door, as if he could smell Harper's fear through the steel. Inside that building, Harper sat bound to a splintered chair, her blood tracing slow paths down her temple. Vaughn's pistol gleamed dully under the flickering lights as he pressed it to her forehead. Neither knew death was coming for them tonight, just not the one they expected. The warehouse air hung thick with the metallic tang of blood and gunpowder. Vaughn's breath came in ragged bursts as he loomed over Harper, the pistol trembling slightly in his grip. Hours of threats, of calculated cruelty, had left her battered but unbroken. A thin trail of blood traced from her split lip down her chin, yet her eyes burned with something that made Vaughn's finger hesitate on the trigger. "You're wrong," Harper rasped, her voice scraped raw but steady. "I know there's one person who will never abandon me." Vaughn's sneer faltered for just an instant, long enough for the shadow to strike. Rex came like a vengeance-fueled missile, his powerful jaws clamping around Vaughn's gun arm with a sickening crunch. The gunshot rang out wild, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling as Vaughn's scream shattered the tense silence. Harper's chair rocked violently as Rex's 90-pound frame wrenched Vaughn sideways, the man's free hand clawing uselessly at the dog's scarred shoulders. With a brutal kick, Vaughn sent Rex skidding across the concrete, the dog's body leaving a dark smear of blood in its wake. But Rex was up before Vaughn could regain his footing, those golden eyes blazing with feral determination. He hit Vaughn low and hard, his teeth finding purchase in the meat of the man's thigh this time. Vaughn's shriek of pain mingled with the approaching sirens as Grayson burst from cover, his service weapon trained on Vaughn's forehead. "Drop it!" Grayson's command cut through the chaos. Vaughn's fingers spasmed toward the fallen gun, but Rex was already moving, a black streak intercepting the weapon, sending it clattering away with a well-placed paw. The dog rounded on Vaughn again, his muzzle glistening red, a guttural growl vibrating through the warehouse. Grayson's pistol butt came down like a hammer on Vaughn's temple. The man crumpled, his body folding bonelessly to the stained concrete. Rex stood over him, chest heaving, still poised to strike should those fingers so much as twitch. Outside, the strobing lights of a dozen cruisers painted the walls in alternating shades of blue and red. Harper's breath hitched as Grayson rushed to her side, his hands working frantically at the ropes. Rex limped over, his warm tongue brushing her dangling fingertips, gentle despite the blood matting his fur. In that moment, with Vaughn unconscious at their feet and Justice finally at the door, Harper buried her face in Rex's neck and let the tears come. The warehouse doors burst open with a metallic shriek. Ethan led the charge, his arm raised to signal the swarm of tactical agents flooding inside. Vaughn staggered backward, his designer shirt now a canvas of crimson. His wild eyes darted between Harper and the approaching officers, a cornered animal realizing the hunt had turned. "On your knees, now!" An agent's bark cut through the chaos as Vaughn was forced face first onto the concrete. The handcuffs clicked with finality. Harper remained motionless in the splintered chair, her body a map of bruises and burns. Yet as Grayson worked at the ropes binding her wrists, she turned her head with deliberate slowness. Her voice scraped out like steel on stone. "I always knew you'd have to pay for this, Vaughn." The former deputy chief's jaw clenched, but no retort came. The fight had drained from him along with his blood. As the last rope fell away, Harper's body pitched forward, only for Grayson to catch her against his chest. Then, a sound, faint, guttural. Her breath hitched. There, sprawled on the oil-stained concrete, Rex lay panting. His black fur was matted with dirt and blood, one hind leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Yet his amber eyes burned with undimmed focus, locked onto Harper's face as if memorizing every feature. "Rex." His name escaped her lips like a prayer. The dog stirred at the sound, dragging himself forward with agonizing determination. Each movement left a fresh smear of blood, but he didn't stop until his muzzle rested against Harper's thigh. His entire body trembled with the effort, yet his tail gave one feeble thump against the floor. Harper's hands shook as they hovered over his wounds. A tear splashed onto his torn ear, cutting a clean track through the grime. "Old friend," she whispered, fingers gently tracing the familiar scars along his flank. "You did so well." Rex exhaled sharply through his nose, the same sound he'd always made when she praised him after a difficult training exercise. His tongue lolled in a weak attempt to lick her fingers. Grayson watched silently, his hand steady on Harper's shoulder. The scene before him wasn't just handler and K9. It was something purer, a bond forged in gunfire and darkness that no amount of corruption could tarnish. Ethan's urgent voice cut through the moment. "He's lost a lot of blood. We need to get him to a vet immediately." Harper didn't respond. She simply pressed her forehead to Rex's, her tears mingling with the blood on his fur. In that silent exchange lay everything words could never capture. The months of separation, the torture, the certainty that somehow, against all odds, he'd find her, just like he always had. Harper didn't rise when Grayson offered his hand. Not yet. She remained kneeling on the cold concrete, her fingers buried in Rex's blood-matted fur. After days of torture, of having everything stripped away, her badge, her freedom, her dignity, this single point of contact anchored her. The warmth of his body, the steady rise and fall of his ribs beneath her palm, the way his tail thumped weakly when she whispered his name. This bond no one could take. Ethan moved first, barking orders for an ambulance. Grayson's hands were gentle but firm as he finally helped Harper stand, though her gaze never left Rex. "Let's go, old friend," she murmured. The shepherd tried valiantly to rise, his front legs trembling with the effort. When they buckled, Grayson caught him, supporting his weight as Rex took 3 staggering steps, each one a victory. His eyes remained locked on Harper, dark with pain but bright with triumph. He'd found her, completed his mission. Outside, the flashing lights of countless emergency vehicles painted the warehouse district in surreal blues and reds. Yet all eyes were drawn to the battered woman and her wounded dog. No speeches were needed. Every officer present understood they were witnessing something far beyond a simple rescue. This was the physical manifestation of loyalty itself, a bond that had withstood torture, corruption, and the full might of a criminal empire. 3 weeks later, FBI Command Center. The sunlight streaming through Harper's hospital window should have felt warm. Instead, she stared at the bandages encircling her forearm, her mind thousands of miles away, where simultaneous raids unfolded across 12 time zones. On the muted television, news footage showed SWAT teams breaching a Manhattan high-rise, offshore accounts freezing mid-transfer, a procession of handcuffed executives being loaded into armored vans. The Black Widow organization was collapsing in real time. For the first time in decades, the scales were tipping, not through some grand political gesture, but because of a dog's unshakable loyalty and a detective's refusal to look away. Harper's fingers absently traced the fresh scar along her hairline, a twin to the one on Rex's shoulder, both earned in defense of the other, both proof they'd survived. Somewhere in the building, Rex was undergoing yet another surgery. The vet said he might always favor that leg. Harper knew better. That dog would chase justice until his last breath, just like her. The hospital sheets crackled as Harper sat up abruptly. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, painting stripes across the FBI agent's crisp suit as he placed the thick file on her bedside table. Completely exonerated. The words should have sent her soaring. After months of imprisonment, torture, and running, after watching good officers turn their backs while a dog fought harder for justice than the entire system, she was free. Yet Harper felt nothing, just a hollow where rage and determination had burned so fiercely. Then, like lightning, the thought struck. Rex. Her hands fisted in the thin blanket. Where is he? How is he? The agent's polished shoes shifted on linoleum. Still in veterinary ICU, but stable. He lost a lot of blood from the gunshot wound, and Harper was already moving, fourth stand rattling as she shoved past him. The hallway blurred, nurses shouted, none of it registered. Then, the glass door of the treatment room. Her palm slapped against the cool surface, steadying herself as her eyes adjusted to the dimness inside. There, swathed in bandages, his powerful frame reduced to slow, shallow breaths, Rex lay motionless under clinical lights. The white gauze stood in stark contrast to his normally glossy fur, now matted with dried blood and antiseptic. Harper's knees hit the floor beside him with a thud that echoed in the sterile space. Hey, boy. Her whisper fractured on the last word. Rex's ear twitched before his eyes slid open. Those familiar amber pools clouded with pain, but alight with recognition. His tail gave a feeble thump against the mattress as he strained to lift his head. No, no, Harper murmured, pressing a trembling hand to his shoulder. Easy. His warm tongue dragged across her knuckles in one slow, deliberate swipe. A tear splashed onto his muzzle, cutting through the grime. Grayson's voice came softly from the doorway. After you were captured, Rex never left my side. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. Just waited. He moved closer, his shadow falling across them. When we learned Black Widow was moving to execute you, he was the one who found Vaughn's hideout. Led us straight to you through 3 miles of industrial wasteland on that injured leg. Harper's fingers stilled in Rex's fur. She'd known he would come for her, had clung to that certainty in Vaughn's torture chamber. But hearing the details, Rex sighed deeply, his body relaxing into the mattress as if finally content. His eyes drifted shut, but his paw remained firmly atop Harper's hand, the way he'd always done during thunderstorms when she was the one who needed comforting. Outside, the world kept turning. Arrests were made. Headlines declared justice served. But here, in this quiet room, the only thing that mattered was this: they'd both kept their promise. The antiseptic scent of the veterinary clinic faded as Harper's memories surged forward, vivid as yesterday. Rex's slow breathing beneath her palm became the excited panting of a young German shepherd fresh from canine training, all boundless energy and stubborn will. She remembered their first meeting at the precinct, how his amber eyes had assessed her with unnerving intelligence before he'd promptly chewed through her brand-new leash. The trainers had warned her, this one's too headstrong, washed out of 2 programs already. Their first crime scene played like a film reel in her mind, Rex's ears snapping forward at a sound no human could detect. How he dragged her toward that hidden side door during the drug bust, his entire body vibrating with urgency. The way time had seemed to slow as he launched at the knife-wielding suspect, moving with a precision that defied his lack of field experience. A soft groan from the medical bed brought her back. Rex's tail thumped weakly against the padding, as if he too remembered. Harper's thumb traced the old scar along his shoulder, the one he'd earned that day. She could still hear the precinct captain's astonished voice. "Damn dog saved your whole team, Calloway." Not all memories were of triumph. There was the sweltering summer afternoon when Rex had flat out refused the obstacle course's 8-foot wall. 3 hours they'd battled, Harper's commands growing hoarse, Rex's stubborn sits becoming more entrenched, until finally, exasperated, she'd crouched eye level with him. "Why won't you just—" And then she'd seen it, the barely perceptible tremor in his hind legs, the way his claws dug into the dirt. Not defiance, fear. That night she'd sat cross-legged in the kennel with him until dawn, feeding him treats for every tentative step toward the practice wall. By month's end, he was clearing it effortlessly. Grayson's voice pulled her from the recollection. "We should let him rest." Harper nodded, but didn't move. Her fingers found the shaved patch where the vet had stitched his latest wound. This dog had fought through gunfire and knives for her, had refused to eat when they were separated, had tracked her through hell itself. And Vaughn thought loyalty could be bought with money and power. Rex's tongue lolled in a tired pant, his eyes heavy with medication. Yet when Harper leaned close, his ears twitched forward, still on duty, even now. "Sleep," she whispered, pressing a kiss between his eyes. "I'll be here when you wake." Just like he'd always been for her. The veterinary monitors beeped steadily as Harper's fingers absently traced the ridge of scar tissue along Rex's shoulder, the one he'd earned during that warehouse ambush. She could still feel the gut-churning moment when his warning yank on the leash had saved her from the sniper's bullet. "Sorry for making you worry," she whispered, her throat tight. Rex responded by nudging his wet nose into her palm, his warm breath puffing against her skin. No condemnation in those amber eyes, just quiet understanding. Grayson leaned against the doorframe, watching the pair. In 15 years of K-9 operations, he'd never seen a bond like this. Rex's loyalty wasn't trained, wasn't conditioned. It was something elemental, as innate as his heartbeat. Outside, the world kept turning. News vans camped at the precinct. The FBI dismantled Black Widow's remaining cells. But here, in this sterile room, time seemed suspended. Until the phone rang. Grayson's expression darkened as he listened. "Harrington's gone," he said finally. Cleaned out his accounts, torched his files. Harper's hand stilled on Rex's back. Of course, Harrington would be the one to slip away. The man who'd manipulated cases for years knew exactly how to vanish. Rex let out a soft whine, sensing the shift in her posture. Harper looked down at her partner, at the fresh bandages covering wounds earned fighting Harrington's corruption. The dog's ears pricked forward, alert despite his injuries. "We'll find him," she murmured, more to Rex than Grayson. Her fingers curled gently around the dog's paw. "This isn't over." Because Harrington had made one fatal miscalculation. He'd assumed breaking the system would break her, but he'd forgotten the wild card, the four-legged warrior currently licking Harper's fingertips as if to say, "I'm still here. We're still fighting." And when a K-9 like Rex made a promise, he didn't stop until the job was done. The moment Vaughn fell, a man like him wouldn't simply run. He would plan, find a way to hide, or even try a counterattack. This made Grayson feel uneasy, but what was even stranger was how he vanished. The last images the police obtained from security cameras showed him leaving the house, looking like a completely different person. His face was no longer Michael Harrington's. It was a middle-aged stranger, not found in any ID records. There were no signs of rush plastic surgery, no way he could have changed his look so fast. That was when Grayson realized Harrington had used a biological polymer mask, the same tech Black Widow had used to frame Harper. Not only had he twisted Harper's case, but he'd also used that exact tech to hide his own identity. This was something no one saw coming. A man who could wear any face, blending into the crowd unnoticed. The hunt for Harrington grew tougher than ever. If he could change his appearance in seconds, how could they find him among millions? In the days that followed, the FBI searched everywhere, but every lead went cold. He left no trail, didn't use his old identity, and didn't contact anyone in the syndicate. But Grayson refused to believe Harrington could disappear for good. A man like him wouldn't just quit. He still had a goal, still had plans. The real question was Harrington running, or was he close, waiting for his moment? While the FBI ramped up their search, Rex, with the instincts of a trained K-9, acted first. Despite his injuries not fully healed, he stuck to Harper, always alert. One morning, as Harper reviewed case files, Rex suddenly leaped up, lunging at the window and barking fiercely. This wasn't normal. Sensing danger, Grayson rushed outside, where Rex was circling the yard, sniffing the ground like he'd caught a trail. A thought hit Harper. If facial recognition failed, why not use smell? People could change their looks, but they couldn't hide their body's traces. Sweat, pheromones, even their scent. A mask couldn't fool that. And if anyone could track Harrington, no matter his disguise, it was Rex. Harper moved fast, guessing he might still be nearby, because the riskiest spot was often the last place anyone looked. She had Rex sniff Harrington's old belongings from the evidence locker. Rex went wild, barking before bolting down a nearby alley, nose to the ground. Harper followed, matching Rex's pace. The dog never slowed, ears pricked, muscles taut. The scent was fresh. Harrington was close. Harper scanned the crowd, every sense on edge, trying to spot anyone acting suspiciously, but what made this pursuit so dangerous was Harrington's ability to change his appearance. He could be standing right in front of her, but with a totally different face. Rex suddenly stopped in front of a food stall on the side of the road and headed straight for a man in a brown coat who was hurriedly moving through the crowd with his head lowered. In an instant, Harper noticed the odd behavior. He wasn't looking around, wasn't watching his surroundings, as if he just wanted to disappear. Her hand shot for her gun, and she picked up her pace, staying right behind him. "Stop!" Harper shouted, drawing her weapon. The crowd startled, turning to look, murmuring in surprise. The man in the brown coat froze for a second. Hen suddenly spun around and bolted. "Rex, block him!" Harper commanded. Immediately, Rex charged forward like an arrow. The market exploded into chaos as people screamed and scrambled out of the way, the large dog tearing through the aisles, locked onto the fugitive. Harper followed close behind, her feet pounding the slippery pavement, every step firm and unyielding. Harrington veered into a narrow alley, darting past cracked concrete walls and piles of trash. He knew the area well, every dead end, every escape route. But Harper wasn't giving him the chance. She aimed for his leg and pulled the trigger. A sharp crack echoed. But Harrington twisted, the bullet only grazing the edge of his coat. Rex was inches from him, front legs coiled to tackle. But in that split second, Harrington rammed into a nearby iron door, slamming it shut behind him. Harper reached it a breath too late. She shoved against the metal, but it was locked from the inside. All she heard was the hollow clang of emptiness. "He got away," Harper muttered, disappointment sinking in. She took a deep breath, then turned to Rex, whose fur was still bristling, body tense. Harper clenched her fists. Harrington might have slipped free this time, but he couldn't run forever. She straightened, staring at the cold metal door, her mind sharp with one thought. He wouldn't get far, and she wouldn't stop until she dragged him back. At the temporary FBI headquarters, Harper, Grayson, and Ethan began planning the final capture. They could no longer rely on normal investigative methods. Harrington had proven he could wipe every trace of himself clean. At the international airport, tension hung thick as FBI agents scrutinized every passenger. Since Harrington's escape, every entrance and exit was under heavy watch. Police combed through passenger lists, scanned passports, and deployed the latest facial recognition tech. Yet, despite all their efforts, Harrington still hadn't appeared in the system. He had vanished as if he'd never existed. Suddenly, an alarm blared from the security gate. On the control monitor, the facial recognition system flashed a match with Harrington. Immediately, agents rushed in, subduing a middle-aged man about to board a flight. He was completely caught off guard with no chance to escape. Harper watched it all unfold. Harrington was captured and but everything happened so easily that unease twisted in her gut. She stood with Grayson near the checkpoint, scanning the boarding line. Nothing seemed unusual. Everything appeared perfectly normal. Then Rex barked. The dog stood rigid, gaze locked on passengers ahead. His leash went taut as he growled at a man who'd just passed security, a neatly dressed, unremarkable middle-aged passenger who'd cleared facial recognition without issue. Yet the moment he entered the waiting area, Rex transformed. His body stiffened, fur bristling as he yanked forward with a sharp bark that scattered nearby travelers. Harper's instincts flared. Rex never reacted without cause. She exchanged a glance with Grayson as they focused on the man. At first, he walked normally, then his movements turned jerky. He adjusted his collar, glanced at the information desk, and quickened his pace. This doesn't add up, Harper thought. No innocent passenger acted this nervous. Before she could react, Rex lunged. The dog leaped, paws slamming the man's back. As he stumbled, Rex clamped onto his coat and ripped. Fabric tore, and something else clattered to the floor. Time seemed to freeze as Harper stared. A twisted lump of artificial skin lay on the tiles, revealing the face beneath. Michael Harrington. Agent stood stunned. Two Harringtons? The captured man wasn't just a traitor, he was a master manipulator. Knowing the FBI would scrutinize every passenger, he'd engineered the perfect deception, a decoy to trigger security alerts while he slipped through disguised. The biopolymer mask that once framed Harper now exposed its creator. Harrington didn't hesitate. He spun to flee until a gunshot dropped him. Grayson pinned the writhing man as agents swarmed. Harper crouched, picking up the discarded mask with grim satisfaction. Nearby, Rex panted quietly, tail wagging as he watched his captured prey. After years of manipulation, the architects of this perfect system, Richard Vaughn and Michael Harrington, had finally been undone. Not by technology, but by the one thing they couldn't disguise. The relentless instinct of a K9 who knew his target's scent better than any face. They weren't just corrupt officials taking bribes or dabbling in minor crimes. Vaughn and Harrington served as the crucial cogs that kept Black Widow, that ruthless assassination machine, operating with deadly efficiency. From political killings to silencing potential witnesses, they worked in the shadows to ensure every operation went smoothly, leaving no trace behind. Their system was so meticulously crafted that even the most skilled investigators couldn't penetrate it. Whenever a murder occurred, Black Widow operatives knew exactly how to sanitize the crime scene, alter evidence, and redirect suspicion toward an innocent patsy or carefully chosen scapegoat. Over the years, Vaughn maintained absolute control by personally overseeing all sensitive cases. Harrington, as a high-ranking police inspector, handled the paperwork, signing off on reports and ensuring all official conclusions served their interests. Their fatal error, and it was a monumental one, was selecting Harper Calloway as their fall guy. When Black Widow's leadership ordered Brandon Miller eliminated because he knew too much, Vaughn needed a credible scapegoat. A decorated officer whose reputation would make the frame-up believable. Harper, with her sterling record and unshakable integrity, seemed perfect. Ironically, those very qualities that made her the ideal patsy also made her dangerous. They knew if she kept digging into unsolved cases, she'd eventually uncover their entire operation. The setup was flawless. Using advanced biopolymer mask technology, a killer wearing Harper's exact likeness appeared on security footage at Miller's murder scene. Harrington made sure the forensics told their fabricated story. Harper's fingerprints on the weapon, planted evidence, coached witnesses. They'd built an airtight case with no apparent weaknesses. But they'd forgotten one crucial factor: Rex. If Harper was an exceptional detective, Rex was something even more remarkable. Not just a trained K9, but a partner with near uncanny instincts and unshakable loyalty. He wasn't simply following orders. He possessed an almost supernatural ability to detect what humans missed entirely. The moment Harper was taken into custody, Rex's behavior changed dramatically. He refused to obey commands, stopped eating his meals, and constantly searched every corner for his missing partner. When Grayson took over his care, the dog immediately began leading him to crucial pieces of evidence, systematically unraveling Vaughn and Harrington's elaborate conspiracy. Rex's relentless determination started the chain reaction that would bring Black Widow's operations crashing down. It was Rex who discovered a fragment of the biopolymer mask, the first physical proof that someone had impersonated Harper. He saved Grayson's life during a dangerous chase, uncovered the secret biomask production facility, and ultimately exposed Harrington at the airport when the fugitive tried to escape disguised as an ordinary traveler. Vaughn and Harrington's fatal error wasn't their corruption or their alliance with assassins. It was underestimating the power of a devoted K-9. When Rex identified Harrington through his flawless disguise, the master manipulator's composure shattered. The man who had controlled evidence, witnesses, and the entire justice system found himself powerless against a creature whose loyalty couldn't be bought or broken. As Harrington lay bleeding from his gunshot wound, meeting Harper's icy stare across the tarmac, he understood his empire was finished. Vaughn's arrest soon followed. The once powerful man now just another prisoner being hauled away in cuffs, his furious glare devoid of its former authority. Harper stood with Rex at her side, watching as the criminal network they'd spent years building collapsed in a matter of days. Black Widow's protectors fell, their financial secrets exposed, their members rounded up by the FBI. The very system they'd manipulated to condemn others now delivered their own punishment. Harper's exoneration brought more than just freedom. It brought the realization that she owed her life to Rex. While the world had turned against her, this remarkable dog had never lost faith. As she knelt to stroke his head, Rex responded with a soft whimper of contentment, his eyes bright with affection. "You saved me again, old friend," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. In the federal courtroom, Vaughn's trembling confession laid bare the full extent of Black Widow's crimes. Harrington, the former guardian of justice, stood silent as his life sentence was pronounced. His reign as a shadow puppeteer finally ended. Outside, Harper breathed in the morning air, sunlight dappling the wet pavement through the trees. The physical bars were gone, but the scars remained, both the visible ones and those etched deeper. She had nearly lost everything, but through the darkness, three things had remained constant: Grayson's steadfast partnership, her own unbreakable will, and the extraordinary bond with a dog who had refused to let her fight alone. Harper stood quietly, the weight of everything that had happened settling around her like the morning mist. Grayson moved to her side, his presence as steady as ever. He didn't need grand gestures, just a simple nod and those quiet words. "We did it." In that moment, Harper understood her freedom hadn't been won by evidence alone, but by those who had refused to give up on her. Grayson, Ethan, and Rex, always Rex. The dog leaned against her leg now, his warm body a comforting pressure, his head cocked slightly, as if attuned to her every breath. The physical wounds had healed, but the scars remained, not as marks of shame, but as badges of honor. Rex had been more than just protection. He'd been her anchor, connected to her by something deeper than training, something words could never capture. As the FBI continued dismantling Black Widow's remnants, the awards and promotions came. Harper took command of a new investigative unit, her hard-won experience now a weapon against future conspiracies. Grayson, with his razor-sharp instincts, headed up a task force targeting organized crime. But it was Rex who captured the public's imagination, the four-legged hero whose face graced news broadcasts and became the symbol for K-9 recognition. At his medal ceremony, surrounded by hundreds of cheering supporters, Rex stood patiently as Harper fastened the honor around his neck, his answering nuzzle against her cheek, the quiet groan of contentment. He understood. The thunderous applause seemed like it would never end. Harper caught Grayson's eye across the podium, And in that silent exchange passed all the unspoken things, the close calls, the shared struggles, the quiet victories that had brought them here. Sunlight spilled across the square, gilding everything in gold. Rex lifted his muzzle into the breeze, eyes bright, every inch the hero the world now saw him as. Harper's smile came easily, her hand resting on his back. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, she knew one truth with absolute certainty. With this team, with this family beside her, the fight would always be worth it. Their story had become more than just about exposing corruption or clearing a name. In a world where truth could be bought and justice manipulated, Rex had proven that some lights could never be extinguished. The light of loyalty, of trust, of a bond that no darkness could break. And as long as those lights burned, the shadows would never win.